right, we're back on our relief map now of the moon. This is not a live picture of the moon. We have a live picture available, but it does not show us the astronauts, and we're employing this, which is set up here in our studios, in order to give you a good idea of where they are and some notion of the terrain they're encountering. Let's listen now.
It's stop G here.
The pointer there indicates where they are.
They're working in this triplet area, Frank, and running out of time very rapidly and beginning to run low on oxygen in their plisses, their portable life support system backpacks. Capcom Fred Hayes has just given Shepard and Mitchell the word that Mission Control is taking back 15 minutes of that half-hour extension. They want them back in the limb and as fast as possible. So they're going to skip some of the sampling intended to be done at G along this area and here, Station G.
Each Mitchell will do the hammering into the lunar soil.
I don't think the trench in the far wall is clear here.
While Mitchell taking the core tube sample, Al Shepard will be digging the trench.
And those are two of the last major experiments left to be performed before getting back to Antares, their lunar module. The core tube sample, Shepard's digging along here, or rather Mitchell's digging along here, and the trench that Shepard will dig in this area, some 700 feet away from their Antares lunar module.
I've tried to push in the core tubes, triple core tube. I get maybe a 3 to 4 inches of pushing in by hand, and it's just surface stuff. Very soft. It will not support the weight of the core tube. Now I've got it balanced. I can take a picture of it perhaps.
Okay, we're recap.
Recapping here briefly, Shepard and Mitchell are 3 hours and 5 minutes, or actually about 7 minutes, into a scheduled 4-hour and 15-minute EVA that had been extended to 4 hours 45 minutes, has now been subtracted or retrenched, if you will, to 4 hours 30 minutes. They have yet to finish this sampling, make their way back to the Antares lunar module, and thence some 600 feet to the west of Antares to re-aim the antenna on the ALSAT, the Apollo Lunar Surface Experiment Package Central Station. Then 600 feet back to Antares before ingressing, ending the second moonwalk, and getting ready for liftoff.
You're taking care of the triple core on your own now?
That's firm. Al's busy with his trench.
Okay, very good.
They've made up some of the time they lost, working their way up to the rim of Cone Crater, which they never quite did.
And this is not going in easy, Brad.
Roger it.
Jules, I make it about another hour and 15 minutes before they are due back in. Is that right?
Yes, that's the way my timeline would work for it too, Frank. And they've made it back very rapidly from that boulder-strewn plateau and steep sloped
Yes.
that was near the rim of Cone Crater, which they didn't quite get to. They must have virtually galloped back.
But I think I'm on solid rock. And I'm about 1 core tube down.
Each of those core tubes 15 inches deep, and Mitchell reporting he's having trouble driving them into the rock.
In reality, after they get back in the limb, they've still got a full day's work cut out for them. They have the ascent and rendezvous, so they're
That would
a busy
explain,
day.
Foreman, why they've dropped a lot of those stops and experiments, right?
Pardon me?
That would explain why Hayes and Mission Control have had them drop a lot of the experiments and stops on the way back.
That's right.
All right, we'll take a pause for just a moment. We'll have more on Apollo 14 after this word from Tang.
And when you pull it out, they'd like to save the bottom.
This is Frank Reynolds with Frank Borman and Jules Bergman here at ABC Space Headquarters in New York. The astronauts making their way back now to their lunar module after this very, very long traverse. They still have quite some time to spend on the lunar surface, more than an hour before they go back inside the LEM. We want to go once again to Houston, where Pete Conrad, the commander of Apollo 12, is standing by to give us his impressions of this mission thus far and this most exciting and fascinating lunar exploration today. Are you there, Pete? Disappointed if you'd been out there and had not been able to get right up to the edge of that cone?
Well, it sounds like the country's a little rougher than maybe everybody expected it to be. I understand that they've seen boulders as big as 45 feet. That's a pretty darn big boulder.
And how? They made it back pretty quickly, though, thus far. It's easier coming downhill, I guess.
Yeah, did I just hear Ed say he thought he was standing on solid rock?
Yes, as he was taking the core sample.
He said one core diameter in, he thought he was hitting solid rock, Pete. Oh, I see. Well, that's, of course, what we're hoping for in that part of the country, to get down to that type of material. And I guess also some of the material from up around Cone Crater, which would be really the Frau Morrow material that they're looking for. You know, we were just mentioning, Pete, that a lot of people, for most everyone, today's work that they've already done would be a full day's activity, but they've got quite a bit left with the liftoff and the rendezvous. How about, could you give us a little idea of just exactly what that'll involve? Well, of course, that's a real shot in the arm. Just the incentive of the fact that you're going to start home, that makes a long day seem a lot shorter, I think. Actually, I know on our flight after we got back in that end of the checklist went quite rapidly, and if you remember, you bring up the inertial platform about 2.5 hours before liftoff and do your first alignment so the ground can check and make sure that you're going to have a good inertial platform for rendezvous. And as I remember it, Al and I had a good opportunity to stay on the checklist, get ahead of schedule a little bit as we went along, and had the opportunity to really just sort of sit around and recap what we'd done and relax a little bit. So I suspect that they'll be able to take a little rest from the time they get in until the time they lift off. And,
Pete,
yeah.
Pete, I'm sorry. Even now, Shepard and Mitchell, after first sounding somewhat winded and overheated as they climbed the slope of Cone there, even now they sound full of energy. And yesterday, after that difficult EVA, they sounded positively full of steam and asked for an early beginning to this EVA and an extension. What gives them all that juice, if you will?
Well, Jules, I really think I discussed that a little bit yesterday. I'm not sure that the doctors would agree with me, but I really think by virtue of the fact that your whole internal body is working in this 1.6G environment, and Al and I had the impression, I think you really spring back faster. You go get yourself winded and get tired, but if you had done the same equal comparable work on the ground weighing your normal weight, I don't think that you come back quite as fast on the ground. And we very definitely noticed that when we got a little bit tired or a little bit winded, if we took 2 or 3 minutes rest, we seemed to spring right back. Now, one of the ways you could, I would suspect, determine this is to look at their heart rate, which of course they're getting on the ground, and see how fast the heart rate comes down when they stop to take a rest.
Is EVA in itself so exhilarating as to, well, for example, some people called it the Conrad hop when they watched you and Bean kangaroo leap around. But is EVA itself so exhilarating that you want to keep it going at it?
Well, I I can't say that it's any more exhilarating than anything else you're doing up there, but obviously you psychologically have yourself pointed to these 2 EVAs. I mean, that's what you've done all the training for. The object of the whole mission is to get out on the lunar surface and do as much science and collect as many rocks and get the job done. So you're really pointed to putting your all into this particular part. This is the payoff of the whole flight, is to be out there on the lunar surface and get the samples and get your ALSAP running and get the job completed.
Pete, if you'll just stay there, we're going to perform a few electronic tricks here and superimpose you over the map we have of the lunar surface, and we don't want to miss any of this air to ground. It's got some pretty good conversation going here.
Okay.
Let's go back to this map.
Time of cabin depressurization, and our clock counting down shows 1 hour, 12 minutes to go.
3 frames here, probably 69, 70, 71. 4 tubes. The first one's the aborted one that I couldn't get in. The second one, second picture is this new attempt at 15-foot shot that I raised up and took a locator shot on the horizon on this. I think it might go.
Very good.
Recapping where we are here. Mitchell's trying to finish the core tube experiment while Shepard finishes the trench digging experiment.
Jules, a minute ago you were talking to Pete Conrad and describing the Conrad hop that he was performing while he was on the moon EVAing. I think we should note that Pete hops around quite a bit on Earth also, and he's one of the few people that can get through any checklist in half the time it's required by anybody else.
He got the lunar patent rights extended to the Earth on the Conrad hop. Now he's hitting Rock 13, too.
Shepard has apparently completed his trench digging task, while Ed Mitchell continuing in his attempt to drive the triple core sample, the triple core tube.
They're back now, just cleaning up the last few experiments before they get back in the LEM and head for home. Of course, we weren't fortunate enough to land, but all of our crew found that as we circled the moon continually, the Earth began to look more and more appealing. Pete, did you have that feeling? We had that feeling. Although I must say, we had the opportunity to do what you did after we'd been on the lunar surface. We really didn't get too good a look at the moon. Al and I didn't get too good a look at the moon right after we got there. And I really enjoyed the extra day we had in lunar orbit. You know, we had a day longer on our flight than they do.
An example of the surface finds, that is from the surface layer of the trench.
Roger, Al, bag 19, this sample of surface finds.
And this is a trench Shepard's been digging some 500 feet east of the Antares lunar module along the north wall of North Triplet.
Take from the walls of the trench the type of material, glassy type material that I could see while I was digging, so I'll just get a shovel full of that. And it will mix the surface with a second layer.
Roger, Al. How deep did you finally end up getting down?
Yeah, the trench is about a foot and a half deep. I gave up actually not because it was hard digging, but because the walls kept falling in on it, and it was covering all the evidence of stratigraphy.
Roger, Al.
That's two interesting points there, Frank. We came back and said you could dig as deep as you gave the person a tool, as long as they didn't run into hard material. The other thing is, in all our trenches, the sides never fell in, so they finally got to a point where Al is mentioning there, the sides fell in. So he was hoping to get down 2 feet, and it sounds like he got down 1.5 feet.
maybe try to...
And the intent, of course, here, Pete, is to get a stratified layer, a cutaway view layer, if you will, of the surface, and then inch by inch all the way down to see the action of solar erosion and meteorite strikes on the lunar soil and rocks.
As far as it's going, Houston.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that the scientists would really like to determine, and that is the process that makes this fine lunar material. I'm not sure we completely understand what's made it all.